I keep a lot of commonplace books, but this one is my favorite. It's my golden commonplace book of pocket proverbs. Hey, welcome to Park Notes. I'm Parker Case. I'm a graduate student in philosophy, and this is a channel where I help you study and think more deeply. In this video, I'm going to cover 4 things. First, I will cover the history of commonplace books. Where did the term commonplace come from? It's from Aristotle. And what is the concept of a commonplace book that unites all the different ways that you can keep a commonplace book? Next, I'll go over my favorite commonplace book, which is my pocket proverbs book. This is the most practical, most beneficial, and most enjoyable commonplace book to create and to use. Then I'll explain how you can keep one just like this, and I'll finish by reading through some of my favorite pocket proverbs. So make sure you watch to the end so you can become an expert on commonplace books in general and wisdom commonplace books in particular. So I'm going to share some of my favorite wise sayings and proverbs with you guys, but I want to hear from you as well. Share your favorite wise saying or proverb in the comment section, and let's turn this YouTube comment section into its own commonplace book. Let's jump right in. Okay, so first things first, what the heck is a commonplace book? I think if we focus in on collections, we can get clear on a distinction between a diary, a journal, a compendium, and a commonplace book. All of these things are collections. A diary is a collection of time-bound feelings. This is how my day went. This is how I feel about it. This is what I'm going to do about it. These are my feelings from today or from yesterday or from this period of time. So a diary is a collection of time-bound feelings. A journal, on the other hand, is a collection of your thoughts. These aren't other people's thoughts. This is what you're thinking. They don't necessarily have to be time-bound, but it's just a record of your own thoughts. Now, I've said several things about compendiums on this channel before. As of today, I think a compendium is a collection of detailed information on a particular topic which is systematically presented for others. It's meant to be comprehensive in scope. Here's this particular topic, and here's all the information you need to know about it. So think of like a field guide book on birds of North America. That's a compendium of information about North American birds. A commonplace book, in distinction from all these other collections, is a collection of quotations or passages. That's it. Now, that's a pretty broad category, so you can do a lot of different things with commonplace books. As I've been using commonplace books myself and studying the history of commonplace books, I found a bunch of distinctions in how people use these things. Some people use commonplace books as a collection of quotations or passages for the public use. They're going to publish a commonplace book of their favorite quotations for others to use. But there are also private use commonplace books, which the compiler did not intend for anyone else but themselves to see. Commonplace books have been used for memorization, so someone will collect a bunch of passages in order to memorize them, commit them to memory, reflect on them, ruminate on them. But they've also used them for manuscripting their own ideas, their own books. So they'll put a bunch of block quotes and then have their own thoughts and string them together in the order that they want to present them in their own work. Some people use them as a general catch-all to collect passages from all the books that they're reading at the moment. Maybe like philosophical miscellany. Here's an idea, here's another idea. They don't have to necessarily be related, but this is what I'm reading at this moment. While others have used them for specific topics. In past videos, I've shown my philosophy of mind commonplace book, my philosophy of artificial intelligence commonplace book. These are commonplace books dedicated to one single topic where I will take quotations and passages that are important for an expert in that field to know, and then I'll also add my own thoughts in there. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can use a commonplace book, but the singular core that unites all commonplace books is that they are collections of quotations or passages for intellectual use. Now, many of us have reinvented the wheel. We have stumbled upon this idea of commonplace books just through our own reading and through our own intellectual development without knowing that it goes all the way back to Aristotle. So let me go a little bit meta on you guys. I've started keeping a commonplace book for commonplace books. I know it's ridiculous, but that's where we're at. Aristotle coined the term commonplaces in his book Topica, and what he meant by commonplaces was forms of arguments. For Aristotle, he had something more like a compendium in mind. These were systematic, detailed instructions on forms of arguments, principal tools of logical and systematic interrogation of truth or falsity of an opinion. Cicero, being a big fan of Greek philosophy, especially Aristotle's rhetoric, appropriated the use of commonplace books, and from there, this guy Quintilian took up Cicero's use of the term commonplaces, and he started adding quotations of passages of prominent rhetoricians in order to bolster his own argument. So he's got an argument, but it's not just my argument, this guy agrees with me as well. So he started incorporating quotes into these commonplaces, and thus the idea of a commonplace book that we now have today was born. So although Aristotle coined the term commonplaces, in my mind, Quintilian is the true father of the commonplace book. Now there's kind of a fun beef in the history of commonplace books. Aristotle coined the term, but then Quintilian kind of gave a new direction to this concept of commonplace books. Seneca seems like he was probably on the side of Quintilian, but then Boethius comes along and translates all of Aristotle's works, and he wants to get back to the original term, to the true purity of the commonplace. And he was ridiculing these rhetoricians who would add quotations to bolster their case. That's like an argument from authority. That's not good reasoning. So there's kind of this back and forth battle, and it seems like it's really a battle between people who have this idea of a compendium in mind and a commonplace book. Should these just be the facts on deductive and inductive arguments and reasoning? Or should they also include passages from famous philosophers and thinkers? I think both are right, but I think we just need to separate them out into compendiums and commonplace books. Maybe I'll do a whole video on the history of commonplace books and another video on the distinction between compendiums and commonplace books. If you guys want to see either one of those videos, let me know, leave me a comment. But that's enough of the history. Let's get into my golden commonplace book of wisdom. Okay, so you may be wondering, why do I have a gold pocket notebook? That's pretty weird. Normally, I like a black hardcover Moleskine or Leuchtturm 1917 squared or grid. I've been using these for years and years and years. In fact, I just came out with a video on how you can keep a pocket notebook, so check that out somewhere up here. So while I normally prefer black notebooks, these gold ones were on sale, like for stupid cheap. So I thought, yeah, these are pretty gaudy and shiny and a little weird, but I cannot beat that price, so I have to get them. I'll figure out a use for them later. Now, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you know that I keep wisdom compendiums and commonplace books in these bigger notebooks. And while I love these beautiful leather notebooks, a major problem with them is I can't bring them with me everywhere I go, but I do need wisdom everywhere I go. So that's when it hit me, make a pocket commonplace book of pocket Proverbs. Now, just like many of us have reinvented commonplace books, only to later discover that there's a whole rich intellectual history that we have entered into by accident, so I discovered that there's a whole tradition of collecting wise sentences, wise statements, sententious maxims in books to reflect on daily. A nice fancy word for this is sententiae. I believe that Aristotle referred to these wise sayings as gnome. Now I'm pronouncing that in Erasmian pronunciation of Greek, and Aristotle was in classical, so I don't know if they pronounced the G or not, but I'm going to say gnome. Later in the Middle Ages, they called them flores philosophorum, flowers of the philosophers. In biblical studies, they call them gnomic statements from this Greek word gnome, but they're sententious maxims. They're proverbs, they're wise sayings, and this represents what I'm calling my sententiarum. I'm getting that from Peter Lombard's Sentences, the theological compilation of quotations and passages from early church fathers and theologians before him. So this is my sententiarum, my sententiae, my collection of gnome, my sententious maxims, my flores philosophorum. There are a bunch of words for it. A lot of people have done this before, but perhaps it's easiest to just call it my pocket Proverbs commonplace book. Oh, and this is just a sticker of my dog, Theophilus, that one of my buddies made for me. Now, the idea behind a pocket Proverbs commonplace book is super duper simple. You just gather up all your favorite wisdom quotes, wise sayings, gnomic statements, whatever we want to call them, and you compile them into one book. I'm trying out a new method where I draw a line and then I put the quotation and the citation on opposite sides of the line, and that's really it. Go and find wisdom wherever you can and compile it all together into one commonplace, one pocket notebook. Bring it with you everywhere you go, and when you're bored, when you have some downtime, pull it out and reflect on the wisdom of the sages. And when I say wherever you can find it, I mean wherever you can find it. I have the Book of Proverbs in here, but I also have the Fellowship of the Ring. I have the Clone Wars. I have science fiction books like Dune, but also philosophers like René Descartes and Augustine. More Clone Wars, Fyodor Dostoevsky. I have a dictionary of maxims and proverbs where I pull from. Arthur Schopenhauer, Cicero, modern philosophers like Roger Scruton, Ancient philosophers like Pythagoras, Master Shifu, and Master Oogway made it into the Commonplace book. C.S. Lewis, Thomas Nagel, Plato, of course, Blaise Pascal made it in here. So did Jesus Christ. Lots more. Clone Wars, the Book of Job, Dune Messiah, Marcus Aurelius, and Diogenes the Cynic. If it's a wise saying that's going to help me live a life of wisdom and become a man of understanding, then I'm going to put it in my pocket Proverbs Commonplace book. I decided not to keep a table of contents in here because I don't really want to know where they're at. The whole point is for me to thumb through here and be reminded of this wisdom. If I had a table of contents showing me exactly where all the wise sayings are, then I wouldn't have to thumb through all this wisdom as often. So I think it'd actually be really fun to have a whole bunch of these filled to the brim with wisdom and just randomly pull from them to see what wisdom I'm going to get that day. So how am I supposed to find enough wise sayings to fill these pocket proverb commonplace books? Well, that's super easy. I've been annotating my books as I read them for the past 10 years. I keep really good notes in here, so when I want to come through and add to my commonplace books, I've already done all the hard work of annotating and creating marginalia for future me to come back and harvest quotes. Now, incidentally, I've also created a video on how to keep marginalia and how you should be writing in your books. So you can find that video somewhere here if you want to know how to create marginalia. So writing in your books as you read them is actually a huge help for future you who wants to create commonplace books like a commonplace book of pocket proverbs. If I had to just go through to try and find wise sayings from these kind of books, it would take me forever. But luckily, I've read Nicomachean Ethics a couple times, and I have really, really good notes in here. I was able to pull a lot of really good quotes really easily, really quickly. So I highly recommend writing in your books, underlining, marking off good quotes, dog-earing pages. This is a tool for you. It's not a museum piece. Not yet. So it really is that simple. Just get yourself a pocket notebook. Could be a Moleskine, could be a Leuchtturm 1917, could be one of these gaudy gold Leuchtturm 1917s. Could be one of these travel journals. I know a lot of people like these. Find yourself one of these ones from Etsy or one of these beautiful Murdy Creative pocket notebooks. This is a moleskin inside of here, but it's got this beautiful leather wrap on it. You can also use these field notes memo books by themselves, or you can put them in leather the way I do. I got both of these off of Etsy. It really doesn't matter what kind of pocket notebook you use. Just get yourself a pocket notebook and start collecting all of your favorite wise sayings into one place. If you're interested in any of these, I'll put links in the description. So get yourself a pocket notebook, start marking up your books for future you to come back and start harvesting quotes out of those books, and you'll be well on your way to creating your own pocket Proverbs commonplace book. Another easy way for you to find wise sayings is to follow and listen to my podcast, Proverb Peddling. You can find a link to the YouTube channel somewhere up here. It's also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's a podcast where I read one wise saying, I give you some historical context for it, I do a little bit of analysis, and then I help us apply it to our modern lives. So if you're looking for wisdom, definitely follow my podcast, Proverb Peddling. Now let me leave you with a smattering of wisdom from a bunch of different sources. Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Proverbs 11:12. Heroes are made by the times. Clone Wars, Season 1, Episode 8. Given the right lever, you can move a planet. Dune, page 19. In the majority of instances, human beings, even the evildoers among them, are far more naive and straightforward than we suppose, and that includes ourselves. Fyodor Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov, page 18, Penguin Classics. One cannot conceive anything so strange and so implausible that it has not already been said by one philosopher or another. René Descartes, Discourse on the Method, page 63. There is nothing so absurd that some philosopher has not already said it. Cicero, page 63 of the Epistemological Skyhook. Before the battle of the fist comes the battle of the mind. Master Shifu, Kung Fu Panda 3. Your mind is like this water. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if you allow it to settle, the answer becomes clear. Master Oogway. Do not poke the fire with a sword. Pythagorean symbol number 5. Humans live best when each has his place to stand, when each knows where he belongs in the scheme of things and what he may achieve. Destroy the place, and you destroy the person. Heretics of Dune, Frank Herbert, page 47. The woman who makes a dog the center of her life loses, in the end, not only her human usefulness and dignity, but even the proper pleasure of dog keeping. C.S. Lewis, First and Second Things, in Compelling Reason, page 24. Reality is not just objective reality. Thomas Nagel, The View from Nowhere, page 27. Fame is so sweet that we love anything with which we connect it, even death. Blaise Pascal, Pensée, Penguin Classic, page 8. Those whose wisdom is imaginary enjoy the favor of judges similarly qualified. Blaise Pascal, Pensée, page 9. To seek something is to believe in its possibility. Clone Wars, Season 5, Episode 3. Truth suffers from too much analysis. An ancient Fremen saying. Dune Messiah, page 100. And he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. Gandalf to Sauron. The Fellowship of the Ring, page 252.